chief legal correspondent, Jan Crawford. She is outside of the Supreme Court, along with Ilya Shapiro of the Cato Institute. Again, in another decision, we have now seen a controversial Texas abortion law overturned here. Jan, it had been called the most important decision regarding abortion in a generation. What to make of it?
Well, I mean, this was a decision that essentially preserves a woman's right to an abortion. Abortion rights supporters had said had the decision gone the other way and upheld these laws, it would have greatly restricted a woman's ability to get an abortion in the state of Texas, because so many of the abortion clinics would have been forced to close because they couldn't have met these rigid requirements that Texas imposed in 2013 when it passed this law. Now, just as a reminder, this law essentially would have required abortion clinics to be like hospital-style surgical centers. So a lot of the clinics aren't like that, and they would have had to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, in some cases millions of dollars, to upgrade their facilities. And many of the clinics said they just didn't have the money to do that. They would have had to shut down. The other part of the law would have required that doctors who work in these facilities have admitting privileges in area hospitals. And again, several clinics said that that was just, a non-starter, that their doctors didn't have those kind of admitting privileges. So Texas had said those laws were necessary to protect the health and the safety of women who were seeking abortions. But the Supreme Court, in its ruling today, rejected that argument and said that argument just didn't justify the burden, the undue burden, that's the key language, that the laws would have imposed on a woman's right to an abortion. It was a 5-3 decision written by Justice Stephen Breyer, who of course is a liberal, but the key vote, and we were talking about this last week, Josh, that human jump ball, Justice Kennedy, today he came down with liberals. Now, Justice Kennedy is someone who has refused to overturn Roe versus Wade, which of course guarantees a woman's right to abortion. So he'll side with liberals on that big question, but he's always sided with conservatives on the regulations.
Since Planned Parenthood versus Casey nearly 25 years ago, this is the first time he's voted to strike down an abortion regulation or restriction. So kind of evokes what he did last week with the affirmative action case, where it was the first time that he had ever voted to uphold an affirmative action program. So this time, today, Kennedy did not write, which is surprising. He has always written in the abortion cases, and here not even a concurrence, just joining with the liberals.
What to make of the lack of a concurring opinion on the part of Justice Kennedy?
I think reading Justice Kennedy is something that, I would say go buy stock if you think you've got, today you'll make a lot of money if you can figure out.
Especially on this issue. I think Breyer's opinion is fairly technical, and it only deals with these two restrictions regarding pre-viability abortions. I think Kennedy would be much different if this was a late term or post-viability at least. And so I think Kennedy, as a matter of statutory interpretation, can look at Breyer's technical opinion and say, yeah, that's right, that's pretty burdensome. I'm looking at the facts here, and that's good enough. No reason for me to wax poetic about the meaning of abortion, because this doesn't raise that broader question.
I agree, and I think it's interesting that Justice Breyer wrote the decision. He has a tendency to write kind of a more technical language than, say, you would have gotten from, say, a Justice Ginsburg or even a Justice Kagan, two other liberals, and some had predicted that maybe Justice Kagan was writing this decision, and that was important to be able to keep Justice Kennedy on the side with the liberals. If they had written a sweeping decision that went well beyond this Texas law and not kept it so narrowly focused, they could have lost Justice Kennedy and lost that key fifth vote. But they were able to kind of maintain this majority of 5 and strike down these laws in Texas. But this goes beyond Texas, Josh, because while this, of course, affects Texas today directly in this law, which now will never take effect, of course, it's struck down, other states were looking at similar laws. So if the court had upheld this law, you could have expected to see other states passing similar laws that abortion rights supporters said would have greatly restricted a woman's right to get an abortion.
And we can't tell you, Hillary Clinton has reacted, saying SCOTUS's decision is a victory for women in Texas and across America. Safe abortion should be a right, not just on paper, but in reality. Went on to say this fight isn't over. The next president has to protect women's health. Women won't be punished for exercising their basic rights. I know you.
And that of course, is a reference to what Donald Trump had said several months ago when asked if women should be punished for having abortions separately from others. And of course, you're going to see Democrats now, and especially Hillary Clinton, try to use this and make this a campaign issue, because with Justice Scalia's death, the court is one justice short. Senate Republicans have refused to confirm President Obama's nomination of Merrick Garland to the court so far. The next president could well fill that seat and others. So the Supreme Court is in the balance.
But remember that in this case, there were 5 votes, even without Scalia. So Scalia would have been in the dissent almost assuredly, and so the result of this case would not have changed.
Does this have, and this is something I suppose we'll be asking a lot, does this have any impact then on whether or not Merrick Garland might receive a confirmation here?
I don't think so.
I don't either. And for the reasons that Ilya said. I mean, I think you're going to see, as I said, you're going to see Democrats make this an issue. You're going to see them try to say this shows why we need a liberal Supreme Court to protect a woman's right. Roe versus Wade is in the balance, but Justice Scalia wouldn't have made any difference.
And Republicans will make the same argument, saying we can't allow any more votes to go in that direction, and not just Scalia, but probably there are going to be 1 or 2 more vacancies in the next term. It's too important. This will certainly ratchet up the specter of judicial nominations in the presidential election, but it will have no effect on the likelihood of Garland being confirmed before the election.
And the same was true last week. I mean, that's what I think was so interesting. Remember, we got a decision last week. It wasn't a decision. It was a non-decision. The court deadlocked 4-4. They couldn't come to an agreement on whether President Obama's immigration policy went too far under the Constitution, so they deadlocked. That kept in place the lower court decision, which had blocked his new policy. But, we saw the president make the case that this shows why we need another justice, a 9th justice. But that decision would have been a decision if Scalia had been on the court, and he would have voted to strike down that policy. So Obama, the president, would have lost.
And Garland would not
way.
have been confirmed in time. So all the cases this term would not have been affected had the Republicans even wanted to confirm Garland in record time. This is all about next term.
And that's not going to stop, the politicians from trying to make the case, the spin.
It will not stop politicians from being politicians, to be sure. I know you have an opinion on the part of Justice Breyer to pour over, but very quickly, Jan, we are seeing some images of the celebration outside. We can hear it behind you. Seems particularly raucous today.
It was. I mean, the good thing for the protesters is that they knew the decision was coming down today. It's the last day of the term, so people didn't have to show up and not get a decision and go home. So you had a very large crowd here.
I think they brought bigger speakers. I mean, I've seen more people here in different times. Oral argument in the immigration case was the most people I've ever seen in, I guess, my 8 or 9 years of covering the court. But this is, there are a lot of people on both sides, pretty evenly matched, and they just all brought their boomboxes.
Yeah, and it was very evenly divided. You had, a lot of women who were pro-life and who were very much hopeful that the court would uphold the Texas law. They said it was important for the safety of women who were seeking abortions. You had another half who were adamantly abortion rights and saying the court should strike down this law. So it kept it pretty peaceful. They had the music. And then, of course, when the word filtered out, when it became obvious that Justice Breyer, that's your first clue, a liberal, had written the decision and that it was to reverse, there's the bottom line, half the crowd at least kind of erupted. I mean, you saw people literally jumping up and down, shouting with joy that the court
I must say, it wasn't as big a deal as last year with the gay marriage case, a year and a day ago, but certainly there was a cheer.
Indeed. Again, Ilya Shapiro and Jan Crawford, we appreciate the time. Very busy day, last day there of the term.
And no more retirements.
No
one announced, so there's not another vacancy at this point for the president to fill.
Exactly.
At this point.
At this hour, that is certainly
It remains a court of 8.